Hello, and welcome to another Rants and Raves, where this week, in a sort of a continuation of something I was talking about in a previous episode, I think the last one. Today, I have on my mind the normalizing of low quality media and data loss, which has become so pervasive in our current digital landscape, and it really doesn't need to be like this, but here we are. So this is a much broader topic that I'm going to give a few examples of, starting with the one that I've had on my mind for a little while now. Previously, I've talked about many times how YouTube has lots of problems, not the least of which is with the quality of its platform's performance. So I'm going to try and get not too technical into this about what the problems are, because I could be here for hours. But the specifics, the non-specific technical aspects that I'm talking about here are particularly around encoding settings and transcoding, the transcoding that YouTube does. You've probably noticed, like, whatever platform you happen to listen to this on or watch your videos on or whatever, that YouTube has various quality settings that you can set your stuff to. In fact, I haven't seen it recently, but they went to the point, this is so bad, they went to the point not that long ago that I saw, and may have been, again, removed, that they were upselling their premium, YouTube Premium, on the basis that if you had YouTube Premium, you could watch stuff at higher quality. Not higher resolution, not different resolution, nothing like that, just allegedly higher quality. Don't know what that means. I can speculate about it, but it gets to that's a big nail in the coffin of me very openly condemning what they're doing, because that makes it obvious they're doing it on purpose. So the problem here is, in the most non-technical way I can talk about, when you transcode media, you're usually doing it for one of a couple of reasons. You're either doing it for compatibility, you're doing it for data compression, so you don't either have to transfer or unpack as much stuff, or there's some minor side issues. But in the case of a platform like YouTube is frankly amazing in a lot of ways. The idea that they store as much video as they do and play it back basically for free is insane. And the technical back end for how that works is a bit of a black box, but like, if you have some technical knowledge, you can start to speculate about it. There are some reasonable concessions that have to be made in the effort to do that. One of those is you can't just be streaming the full quality of video that people upload straight back to all the people who want to watch it, especially because in extreme circumstances, you can upload a 100 gig video that's just extremely high quality, but only a few minutes long. And if YouTube had to play that back and send hundreds of gigs of video over somebody's connection, that would ruin their connection. It would, cause data overruns for people's personal internet. It would put a huge tax on YouTube's own infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. So they try and compress things down to some standards to make it more reasonable. That's fine. The problem is, as I've noted previously, it has gotten visually noticeably worse over time. This is for a couple of reasons. One is, frankly, as I mentioned before, they don't care. They don't care about running a video site. They care about running an ad revenue site. And so if the quality of the video is low, they don't really care. There's also a difference in how people have started consuming their media, and it's been a slow process over the years, but there is an expectation, and I'm no exception to this, that a lot of people are watching their YouTube content they're basically not watching it. They're basically, it's in the corner of their eye. It's a second screen thing. They're on their phone doing something else. And I'm not going to condemn that or, really vote for it one way or the other. I do it as well. It's kind of normal. But it does affect how YouTube chooses to run its platform. However, I'm going to accuse it of, both because of the upselling thing and because of some standards that YouTube and Google as a whole, Alphabet, does in their platforms, I'm going to say that it is a little bit more lazy and ugly than that, where they are overtly just cutting it down because they don't want to be responsible for it. Now, they could talk about this openly if they wanted to. They could say, hey, we're hitting a point where our infrastructure can't handle the level of bandwidth required, or we don't want to, we don't have the horsepower to do these high level transcodes anymore. But the reality is that, especially for certain types of content, certain low quality levels are not acceptable anymore. And when your only option then is to watch it at, like, let's say it's 1080p 60, that's a pretty standard streaming or recording level to put it at. That tends to have the best quality of compression, if only because it's probably whatever, but everything is most highly optimized for. You noticeably see the degradation in lower levels. And I don't just mean, oh, hey, it's 480p content, it's just lower quality. I mean, you can encode 480p content and make it look really good, even though the quality of the resolution of the content is much lower. But that still requires you to have encoding settings, or transcoding settings in this case, that still output something that's visually decent, which YouTube doesn't do anymore, as far as I can tell. And I don't really know why, other than, laziness. It's the difference between, okay, this is going to get a little bit technical for a second. Part of it is that YouTube as a platform and Google as a service provider and the internet as a whole has been trying to move to different encoding standards, basically using stuff like AV1, VP9, these other encoding standards that are not the encoding standards of yesteryear that are MP4-ish based. These are more efficient standards. But the problem is there's other problems with that. One of them is if you don't dial in the settings on those better encoding standards right, then shit looks awful. And this could just be down to not being the settings not being right. But I'm not giving them that excuse because you're a $1 billion company, $1 trillion company. Have somebody look it over and change the settings. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but you get what I'm saying. So I'm not letting them use that as an excuse. Also, there's a whole other problem that I'm not even going to get into here, where these newer encoding standards do not work on a lot of devices because those devices basically have to re-encode the stuff when it arrives. And if they don't have the onboard encoders built into the hardware to do that, they'll either choke on it completely and barely be able to play it, or they will have to work massively overtime to basically take in the data and be able to process it in software. It's much less efficient and it doesn't work. And so YouTube and other platforms are offloading their standard, their problems, their technical lack of will onto the consumer. This is not by any means a solely YouTube problem, which is why I wanted to get into it this whole video. This is a widespread problem and has been a very, very long time. And it's easy to paint with a broad brush and say in the era of digital media, it should not be so easy, let alone so prevalent, for data to lose fidelity at the speed that it does. Because there's vested interests in having data not be lost. It's a lot more overt when you just, lose data in a file and it loses its integrity and you go, this data is corrupted, I can no longer read it. But when it comes to media in particular, this is kind of becoming a special case because the speed at which it's transferred into various communities, the platforms that it's on, the behavior of the people on those platforms, those all influence how that data is processed and reprocessed and reprocessed. So this also gets into other places like, well, other video streaming sites, including lots of paid ones like Netflix and HBO. I think one of the most notable cases that almost everybody could see and became like a media circus after it happened was near the end of Game of Thrones. There was an episode that was extremely dark, and it's just a very poorly shot episode. But watching it live, I remember going, oh, hey, look at all that banding. That's because somebody's encoding, these encoding settings aren't right. Somebody on HBO's side decided to get either cheap or lazy on how they encoded this video, and so that the stream quality coming to everybody's boxes in, on cable or on their digital platforms or whatever looks bad, because it looks worse than the media actually is, even though the media is also bad, because the encoding was wrong. That was a really overt case in the corporate side of things. But this also gets into, I think, people of my generation. A lot of people spend a lot of time just like kind of scrolling through stuff and flipping through what we generally tend to call memes. These, pictures of various things that have been edited over and over again, shared, reshared, copied, etc. And this is a place where it has sort of a different problem, where rather than it being, it's mostly a laziness problem, because it's very easy, even in this day and age, to right-click save as, or even on mobile platforms for the most part. It's a little harder in some cases, but to right-click save as or the equivalent. It should not be so easy to lose so much fidelity at the sheer speed that it does. And every now and again, I stumble upon something where somebody points it out directly and I go, yeah, that person put it really well. I saw a comment a few weeks ago on a picture where somebody was like, this was literally posted by the artist 3 hours ago. How does it look this bad? Because it had already been reposted. That's just the speed of media these days. And so somebody had, I don't know, screenshotted it on their phone. Somebody else had saved it and then re-uploaded it in a different format. So it went from, a PNG to a JPEG, and it lost fidelity. And, it goes over and over again. And part of this is just people being lazy. People just taking a screenshot instead of saving as. I don't know why people do that. But there's also an element to that very point, actually, that it's not even necessarily that that people maliciously don't care that stuff looks worse. There is a technical lack of know-how that has been going on for some time now, especially over the last 10 years, where the level of technical knowledge required to operate a computer or a phone or whatever has been going down. And generally speaking, that is a good thing. However, there is a lot to be said about the state of software design and software engineering, that a lot of services and applications make it much easier to do things a bad way, because either they overtly block the good way to do it. I'm looking at certain websites that block the ability to right-click save as, or the device, whether it's phones, which may have made it harder and harder over the years to actually even access your files, or applications on those devices as well that are in these degraded service level, where it's just has so few features, or those features are broken or hidden or whatever. And so we get into this cycle of media degradation where it's just sort of expected. And to some people, it's just not going to occur to them, maybe, or they're not going to care. And as much as I want to shake those people by the shoulders and say, listen here, you could have it better, I understand that some people just will never care. and that's fine. But I think for those of us who work in and around technology in some form, there's a responsibility to say, no, we're not going to stand for these bad platforms, these bad services, these bad devices doing things that actively work to facilitate the degradation of our data. That we're not going to make it so, we're not going to allow, God, I follow a lot of artists on Twitter. It's the only thing I use Twitter for, basically. And the fact that Twitter, the fact that artists use Twitter frustrates me to no end, because it's a terrible platform in the first place. It's also an extremely bad platform for art, because the manipulations that Twitter's backend does to the files that are uploaded to it, and the way it serves those things up, and it serves them up in degraded forms, in compressed formats with the wrong color, the wrong color space applied to them, and in some cases I have seen actually the wrong resolution, because something about their backend encoder is just like, I'll just squish this instead of letting it have a weird set of weird pixel count. These are the things we need to stand up for and say, no, let's demand better. The hard part is, in almost all of these cases, I'm talking about things that are basically monopolistic. YouTube is basically a monopoly on online free video content. Netflix and HBO and, the other couple of streaming services are basically monopolizing the individual things they serve. Twitter is not quite a monopoly, but in terms of microblogging and video or short video and picture sharing, it is the dominant force to the point of being. It's the path of least resistance. And when it comes to devices, whether it's, Mac or PC, both of Mac or Windows, both of which have had their softwares cut down over and over and over again over the years, or you're getting into phones where both Android and iOS have been having their features locked down and cut down more and more and more. All of these are things that are almost impossible to fight, because they have a stranglehold on the people and the services that they already serve. The ability for anyone, even somebody who has a tool that is better in every single possible way, the ability for them to get any traction, any market share, whatever you want to call it, whether from an economic perspective, a platform perspective, a service and culture perspective, it is incredibly difficult. So there are other things, like there are better sites, there are artist-oriented websites that are better for art in every single way, and they are mildly successful, but because they aren't Twitter, because they don't have the views of Twitter, everybody defaults back to Twitter. Everybody defaults back to YouTube. Everybody defaults, even Twitch. Twitch is, on a technical level, almost universally a better platform than YouTube. But YouTube, well, I actually don't know the metrics on that. I think Twitch actually still does get more stream viewage, view numbers. But obviously, YouTube is the bigger site by a vast margin, because it does multiple things. And so, frankly, it feels like only a matter of time before... Well, no, I'm going to take that back. Twitch will live forever because it's owned by Amazon, and Amazon owns AWS, and AWS will never be purchased by Google or Microsoft. It's its own thing. It's basically a completely separate pillar. Anyway, this is just all to say, like, let's demand, let's call it out when we see it. It's hard for us to say to these technology companies, hey, we demand better, because often these things are free, unfortunately. Or if you do, they'll say, oh, well, all you have to do is give us $15 a month and we'll give you the better version. And that should not be normalized either, because that's super gross for a whole bunch of other reasons. But at the very least, if you know people who work in and around media, even if it's just your buddy who shares memes with you and they screenshot them on their phone instead of saving them like a normal person. Talk to that person and go, hey, man, could you get on a computer or to do this, or on your phone, right click save as and upload properly. Don't screenshot this. God forbid, please don't take a picture of your computer screen with your phone and then upload that. Holy shit. Don't another side thing, websites that automatically watermark everything you upload to them. Holy shit. I can't believe we're still doing that. That's, oh God. Okay. This is getting out of hand. Expect better of the people around you and gently remind people that things could be better and that at least they should try not to facilitate the degradation of media, because we don't want to normalize this, and we don't want to normalize the idea that looking at a crappy facsimile of something that was made 3 hours ago is not only okay, but normal. Anyway, thank you guys for watching me have another rant and rave on this thing, and I'll see you guys next time.